Imagine hanging off the face of this sheer vertical cliff.
Oh man, nightmare scenario.
Right. And you have seconds, literally seconds, to calculate an escape route. And you have to use the Pythagorean theorem, hoping to conjure this bridge of solid light to save your life.
Because that's totally what you want to be doing while plummeting to your doom, right? High school math.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. At the base of the cliff, there are these shadowy rock monsters, and they're actively chiseling away at the ground.
Right.
And they aren't trying to bring the cliff down. That's not the goal. They are trying to alter the 90-degree angle where the cliff meets the earth.
Which is just such a brilliant concept.
It really is. Because if they chip away enough stone to make that angle, say, 89 degrees, the theorem you are relying on instantly collapses. Your math becomes completely invalid, and you just fall into the abyss.
It completely flips our entire understanding of mathematics. Because, I mean, we typically treat geometry as this sterile, abstract exercise, you know?
Something you just do on a chalkboard.
Exactly. Something isolated from the messy realities of the physical world. But the scenario you just described turns absolute geometric truth into a literal, load-bearing pillar of the universe.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into a fascinating stack of sources today. At the center of it all is the fantasy novel, Leo and the Secrets of Mathematica, The Realm of Relations.
Yeah, such a great book.
It really is. But we are also pulling from some literary critiques of mathematical fiction and some historical analyses of Euclidean geometry to really round this out.
Right, because our mission today is to explore this brilliant premise. Like, what happens when mathematical theorems become your literal weapons against an enemy trying to tear reality apart?
Yeah, so let's talk about that enemy, because the antagonist in this universe is this psychological entity known as the bond breaker.
The bond breaker, yeah. And what makes it so compelling is its unique motivation. It has absolutely no interest in brute force destruction. It doesn't want to just smash things.
Right, it's not Godzilla.
Exactly. Its entire goal is isolation. It wants to sever the mathematical relationships, you know, the invisible axioms and those fundamental bonds that just hold reality together.
It wants to prove that every number, every person, every data point is just entirely alone and unconnected.
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly.
It really is. And, you know, if you are someone who follows systems thinking or engineering, or even if you just appreciate a clever subversion of a subject we all suffered through in high school, this approach to geometry is incredibly refreshing.
Oh, completely. It frames pure logic not as something you just observe, but as something you actually wield, like a sword.
Yeah, exactly. And to understand how this works in practice, we have to look at the first major escalation in the story. It's when our main character, Leo, travels to the Pythagorean Peaks.
Oh, the environmental design here is amazing.
It's stunning. We're talking about a mountain range where the slopes form flawless right-angled triangles against this mathematically gridded sky. It's just so cool.
And nestled right within those flawless peaks is this character named Radix.
The Forgemaster of the right angle.
Yes. And she serves as this brilliant counterweight to the abstract nature of mathematics because Radix, she embodies absolute physical precision.
Right. She's not a theorist.
Not at all. She wears this heavy leather apron, she wields a blacksmith's hammer, and her belt is just heavily laden with, like, measuring tapes, calipers, and these silver set squares.
Her whole philosophy is entirely empirical.
Exactly. She only trusts what she can physically measure. She completely dismisses abstract mathematical theory as just, you know, mere daydreaming.
But her empirical worldview gets put to the ultimate test pretty quickly, because the bond breaker launches its first assault by corrupting the tools of measurement themselves.
Right. Which is just devious.
It really is. So Radix is trying to forge this massive new crane lifting joint, and it absolutely requires a true 90-degree angle to function. But suddenly the physical reality of her tools begins to warp under the bond breaker's influence.
Yeah, she uses her most prized silver set square to measure the jolt, and one moment it reads 89.5 degrees.
And then she measures it again, and it reads 90.2 degrees.
Which just creates this profound crisis of perception. I mean, if the tools we use to perceive reality are compromised, finding objective truth becomes literally impossible.
Yeah, it's analogous to an engineer trying to construct a skyscraper using a rubber tape measure that just stretches and contracts randomly.
Right, how do you build anything? You can't. When empirical observation fails, we are forced to find another way to establish truth.
Okay, I do have to push back here for a second, though, regarding the solution to this crisis.
Sure, what's that?
So Leo steps in, and he manages to create a flawless 90-degree angle for Radix using a metal rod and a drawing compass.
Right.
But if the bond breaker has corrupted all physical tools, why isn't Leo's physical compass corrupted? Like, isn't he still just relying on a physical object that could easily be warped by the villain's magic?
That's a great point. But the distinction lies in how the tool is actually being used. See, Radix's set squares rely on marked units, inches, degrees, millimeter.
Right, human conventions.
Exactly. They are arbitrary human conventions projected onto physical objects. The bond breaker can work those arbitrary units. But Leo's compass, however, it's not measuring units. It is preserving a relationship.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. When Leo locks the hinge of the compass, it doesn't matter if the distance between the point and the pencil is 5 inches or 5 corrupted, fluctuating units of magic. The compass just guarantees equidistance.
Because it's locked.
Exactly. It ensures that every point on the arc he draws is exactly the same distance from the center. He is using a physical tool to enforce an abstract definition which circumvents the need for units entirely.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So he is bypassing observation completely and moving straight into construction.
Yes.
He is utilizing the classic Euclidean construction of a perpendicular bisector. And, to visualize this for everyone listening without getting bogged down in textbook instructions.
Please, let's keep it simple.
Yeah. So Leo takes the metal rod and marks a point right in the center. Then, using that unmeasured but locked compass, he draws intersecting arcs from both ends of the rod. Right.
By ensuring those two intersecting arcs share the exact same radius, he guarantees that the point where they cross in the air is perfectly equidistant from both ends of the metal rod.
And that's the magic trick. Connecting that floating intersection point straight down to the center of the rod creates this invisible, flawless isosceles triangle.
Because the two sides have to be equal.
Exactly. And geometric law dictates that when you drop a line from the apex of an isosceles triangle right to the midpoint of its base, the two resulting angles at the base must be identical.
Right.
And since a straight line is exactly 180 degrees, those two identical angles have no mathematical choice but to be exactly 90 degrees each.
They literally have to be. There is no other option. And when Radix tests this newly constructed angle, she realizes Leo didn't guess, and he didn't rely on a faulty ruler.
No, he used absolute logic to force physical reality into compliance. Force it into compliance. I love that. And that moment forms a crucial alliance between them. Radix realizes that her physical grounding, when combined with Leo's logical proofs, turns geometry into a formidable weapon against the bond-breaker's traps.
We see that weaponized geometry deployed almost immediately, right, when they reach the echoing canyon.
Oh, the environmental storytelling here is fantastic.
It's so good. So they stand on the edge of this massive chasm, and next to them is a small 3-meter triangular rock. And hovering far across the canyon is a gigantic echo of that exact same rock, just a massive floating boulder.
And they need to build a bridge between the two.
Right. But the threat here evolves from corrupting tools to corrupting perception itself. The bond breaker unleashes these distortion wraiths.
Creepy as hell, honestly.
Oh, totally. These specters manipulate the space around the giant rock, making it look slightly warped. They're stretching the shadows to convince Leo and Radix that the giant rock is actually entirely different from the small one.
Because they're trying to break the bond of similarity.
Exactly. If the rocks aren't mathematically similar, the magical bridge simply cannot anchor.
The trap is designed to make them rely on visual estimation. And, in mathematics, and certainly in structural engineering, saying it looks about right is a fatal error.
Oh, absolutely fatal. You cannot build a bridge based on a visual assumption. The bond of similarity requires an undeniable proof, which Leo provides using the angle similarity postulate.
Right. So for those who might be a little rusty on their postulates, angle similarity states that if two angles of one triangle are identical to two angles of another, the triangles are definitively similar, regardless of their overall size.
Their proportions are mathematically locked.
Exactly. So Radix uses her instruments to measure the small rock right in front of her, and she finds angles of 40 degrees and 60 degrees.
And then Leo steps up. He uses this magical artifact called the Crystal of Clarity to basically cut through the wraith's visual distortion and read the true angles of the giant rock hovering across the chasm.
And the crystal reveals identical measurements, 40 degrees and 60 degrees.
Boom. By mathematically proving those angles are invariant, the illusion just shatters. The distortion rates are instantly banished because their manipulations simply cannot coexist with absolute logical proof.
It's just so satisfying.
Yeah.
And with the bond of similarity proven, they can finally calculate the scale factor to actually anchor the bridge.
Right. This is where the practical application comes in.
Yeah. So Radix knows the small rock is 3 meters wide. The giant rock across the chasm corresponds to 60 meters. A basic ratio tells them the giant rock is exactly 20 times larger.
Which makes the math pretty straightforward from there.
Exactly. So when their magical blueprint dictates the support beam must be placed 1.5 meters from the edge of the small rock, they just multiply by 20. They know with absolute certainty that the corresponding anchor point on the giant rock is exactly 30 meters out.
A golden beam of light shoots across the gap and locks perfectly into place.
They bridged a canyon using nothing but a ratio. It's incredible.
It really demonstrates the power of spatial reasoning applied under pressure. And, that pressure reaches its absolute peak during the sequence at the vertical cliffs of Mount Pythagoras.
Yes, this is the scenario we talked about at the very beginning, where they are scaling a sheer rock face by summoning ramps of solid light.
Right. And to summon the ramp, they have to calculate the precise hypotenuse of the right triangle formed by the cliff wall and the ledge they are currently standing on.
So we all know the Pythagorean Theorem, right? A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Right.
If the cliff is 8 meters high and the ledge extends 6 meters out, they just square those numbers. Add them to get 100 and find the square root. Leo shouts 10 meters, and the light ramp materializes.
It works perfectly. But the real genius of this scene is how the book highlights the inherent fragility of these foundational rules.
Why? Because of the right angle breakers.
Exactly. The introduction of these monsters swarming the base of the cliff is just a masterful touch. They aren't attacking our heroes directly. They are attacking the geometry of the environment itself.
Which is wild.
It is, because the Pythagorean theorem is a conditional law. It relies entirely on the existence of a perfect 90-degree angle.
Right. If those rock monsters chisel enough stone to reduce the angle of the cliff base to, say, 89 degrees, the triangle is no longer a right triangle.
Nope.
The equation a squared plus b squared equals c squared immediately ceases to function. You would suddenly need the law of cosines to calculate the distance.
And nobody wants to do the law of cosines while dangling off a cliff.
Literally no one. It introduces a level of chaotic complexity they just cannot manage in the heat of battle. The ramp of light would literally shatter into pieces. The characters aren't just solving for C,
Yeah.
They are fighting to protect the environmental constants that make their survival possible.
It's so tense. And that concept, like pushing a formula to its absolute limit, is beautifully expanded when the narrative moves from 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions.
Oh, inside the crystal crypt.
Yes. The setting shifts to this massive, pitch-black, perfectly cubic room. It measures 10 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 10 meters high.
And the bond breaker has erased the floor, leaving them trapped on a tiny ledge at the bottom corner.
Right. Their only exit is a doorway located at the exact opposite top corner of the room.
So they have to conjure a bridge of light that shoots diagonally through the empty 3-dimensional space of the room. It is a fantastic mental exercise because it forces the characters to take a theorem designed for flat planes and apply it to a void.
Yeah, you have to visualize a phantom right triangle standing upright in the middle of the empty room.
Which hurts my brain just thinking about it.
Same. To find the hypotenuse of that upright 3-dimensional triangle, which is known as the space diagonal, they have to deploy the Pythagorean theorem twice in rapid succession.
Walk us through that.
Okay, so first, they imagine a flat line running diagonally across the missing floor of the 10 by 10 room. Squaring both 10-meter sides gives them 200, making the floor diagonal the square root of 200.
Okay, I'm with you. And then that floor diagonal becomes the base of their new upright imaginary triangle.
Exactly. The wall of the room, which is 10 meters high, becomes the vertical leg. So they run the theorem a second time. The wall squared is 100. The floor diagonal, the square root of 200, squared is just 200.
Oh, right. Because the square root and the square just cancel each other out.
Yes. So 100 plus 200 is 300. Leo shouts that the space diagonal is the square root of 300, and boom, the bridge of light slices perfectly through the darkness.
It's such a triumphant moment. And what is particularly compelling about this progression is how it really underscores Radix's impact on Leo.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Leo possesses the abstract knowledge, He has the theorems and the magical crystal. But mathematics without application is merely philosophy.
It's just ideas in your head.
Exactly. Radix provides the essential physical data, the hard, unyielding measurements of reality, that Leo actually needs to feed into his logical frameworks. Their synergy is the total antithesis of the bond breaker's philosophy of isolation.
It really is. And that synergy is the only thing that saves them in the final showdown, which takes place in an arena called the Void of Variables.
Oh, the environmental design here is incredibly stark. It is an endless, pitch-black expanse dotted with solitary, floating points of light. They look like isolated stars on a massive, invisible coordinate grid.
Because the bond breaker is stripping away all physical connections. There are no cliffs here, no rocks, no visible lines, no geometric structures at all, just data points suspended in nothingness.
And the villain issues this impossible challenge.
Yeah.
They must find the perimeter of a polygon formed by these specific points of light.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch. The bond breaker forbids them from assuming any physical line exists between the points. They cannot physically connect them.
Which is a deliberate attempt to sever geometry from algebra. I mean, geometry relies on shapes and lines, while algebra can handle abstract coordinates. By forbidding the physical lines, the bond breaker completely paralyzes Radix.
Yeah, she tries to use her magical light ruler to measure the diagonal distance between 2 points, but the ruler just passes through empty space.
Because a physical tool requires a physical object to measure.
Right. And the bond breaker believes it has won by isolating the physical from the abstract.
Yeah.
If you cannot draw a line, how can you measure its length?
But this is exactly where Leo synthesizes both approaches. He leans on the foundations of coordinate geometry, established by René Descartes centuries ago.
A little history lesson in the middle of a fantasy battle.
I love it. Leo realizes that even if a physical diagonal line connecting 2 points does not exist, those points still occupy space on a grid. They still have relational coordinates.
So Leo instructs Radix to stop trying to measure the non-existent diagonal line. Instead, he asks her to measure the horizontal distance from one point to the next, and then the vertical distance.
Because even in a void, if a grid exists, you can quantify the horizontal offset and the vertical offset.
Right, and Radix adapts instantly. She measures the horizontal gap between 2 points, finding it to be 3 units across. She then measures the vertical gap, which is 4 units up.
And because horizontal and vertical axes intersect perfectly by definition, Radix has just measured the 2 legs of an invisible, abstract right triangle.
So she has a horizontal leg of 3 and a vertical leg of 4. Leo plugs those physical measurements into his abstract logical framework. 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 25.
And the square root of 25 is 5.
By calculating the hypotenuse, Leo mathematically manifests the line into reality. As he calls out the number 5, this brilliant beam of light snaps into existence between the 2 isolated points.
It's beautiful. They utilize the distance formula, which, is fundamentally just the Pythagorean theorem applied to a coordinate plane, to forge a connection born purely out of logic.
And they proceed point by point. Radix measures the horizontal and vertical offsets, providing the raw physical data. Leo executes the theorem, providing the undeniable logical proof.
Segment by segment, they just weave this web of glowing geometry in the dark, calculating the entire perimeter.
And the undeniable truth of those mathematical connections completely overwhelms the bond breaker. The entity literally cannot maintain its existence in a space where fundamental, unyielding bonds have been proven to exist. It just dissolves into the void.
It is a brilliant climax. It demonstrates that neither the abstract realm nor the physical realm is sufficient on its own. The true power lies in the relationship between them.
Yeah, the bondbreaker failed because it fundamentally underestimated the human capacity to forge logical connections where none appear to exist.
Reviewing the entire journey provides a really profound metaphor. I mean, we began with corrupted tools, forcing Leo to construct a perpendicular bisector using pure logic, proving that truth is constructed, not just observed.
Right.
We watched them navigate the echoing canyon using invariant angles to shatter the illusions of the distortion race.
We saw them build literal bridges across three-dimensional voids.
And finally, manifest physical lines out of pure mathematical relationships to defeat an entity of isolation.
The sources we dove into today highlight why a narrative like this resonates far beyond a math classroom. We all experience moments where our senses or our physical tools just fail us. We misjudge complex situations, we are fed manipulated data, and our environments frequently distort the truth.
Oh, constantly.
This story serves as a really powerful reminder that when the physical world becomes murky or unreliable, foundational logic provides an anchor.
It emphasizes finding the signal in the noise. It is about understanding that beneath the chaos of the observable world, there are structural truths that remain constant.
Taking that a step further, it brings us to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. In our modern landscape, we are constantly navigating our own real-world bond breakers.
Absolutely.
We interact with algorithms explicitly designed to isolate us into echo chambers. We face tides of misinformation that attempt to sever our shared understanding of reality. There are pervasive forces trying to convince us that society is irreparably fractured and that we are all just isolated data points drifting in a void.
Just dots in the dark.
Exactly. So looking at your own life, what are your geometric proofs? When everything around you feels like it is fragmenting, what are the undeniable foundational truths you can rely on to build bridges and force connections back into existence? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We will see you next time.